Next fights to make after UFC Fight Night Belgrade, Serbia, Medić versus Daniel Rodriguez. In this video, I'll be creating the matchups that I believe need to be created next after this fight card. Starting off with the main event, the winner of the main event, Medić. What I believe is next for him is a fight he's been calling out a lot for, which is Medić versus Leon Rocky Edwards. Now, if you look at the rankings, I believe this fight makes a whole lot of sense. Medić before this fight was number 14 in the rankings, and he fought Daniel Rodriguez, who was number 15 in the rankings, and he won very easily, so now clearly he deserves a jump up in the rankings. And in the Meta AI and UFC media rankings, Leon Edwards is ranked as number 8 in both the rankings, so number 14 to number 8 is a fair jump up in the rankings, and Medić definitely deserves it, coming off 4 first-round KOs in a row. That's a great win streak. And Leon Edwards kind of on a slump, a 3-fight losing streak, 2 of them by finish. And it does kind of seem like Leon Edwards is scared to take this fight, if we're going to be completely honest. He's been, Medić called this fight out when he KO'd Jeff Neal before this win over Daniel Rodriguez. And Leon Edwards kind of seemed like he wanted nothing to do with it. But I think he's going to have to take it. I thought it seemed like Leon Edwards was going to go for a fight against Mike Medić, which would be kind of an easy one, 35-year-old quote-unquote prospect, and a guy who barely, didn't really have that great of a performance against like a washed-up Gilbert Burns. So it seemed like he wanted that fight, which would make sense as an easy comeback fight. But Mike Medić is now scheduled to fight Joaquin Buckley in the main event of the UFC Canada Fight Night. So Leon Edwards is not going to get that fight. So I think he's going to have to take the fight against Medić. I think the UFC is going to make him take this fight or force him to. And, Leon Edwards is going to have to, kind of fight the scary guy that is Medić right now. But he probably is a little scared, if we're being honest, but also, to be fair to him, maybe he's just trying to recover. He did get brutally KO'd by Carlos Prates at UFC 322, which wasn't even a full year ago. It's going up on 7-8 months now. So maybe he just wanted time to recover. On a 3-fight losing streak, you don't want to rush back into a very difficult fight right after being KO'd. Not a bad decision by Leon Edwards, but now he's had time to recover. He's going to have to take this fight, I believe. And it's not a completely unwinnable fight for Leon Edwards, to be fair to him. He's a very good striker himself. We can't forget that just because he's been knocked down, been beaten. But he's also a very good grappler. We've seen him take down Kamaru Usman, defend all the takedowns from Kamaru Usman, defend the takedowns from Colby Covington, scramble decently well with Bilal Muhammad, and get on top and take the back at points in the fight. And that makes for a pretty interesting dynamic against a Medić who has been dominated and submitted by a lightweight in Medić Oralbai. And I know that guy is literally a caveman and probably kills woolly mammoths with his bare hands, but still, this is Leon Edwards, who's about probably 6'1", out of camp 200 pounds, who's going to be a lot stronger and bigger than Medić Oralbai. So this is an interesting matchup. I don't believe it's completely one-sided, but also you can kind of offer this to Leon Edwards. Recently he's had to fight in America. He doesn't get to choose to fight in the UK since he lost his title. You can do this as the main event of a fight night in London. The UFC likes to go to London for fight nights, and usually seems like a pay-per-view now as well. And Leon Edwards has been able to fight in London when he was a champion, but now that he lost the belt to Bilal Muhammad in London, he hasn't been able to fight in London. Had to fight in America the past couple times. But, against Sean Brady, I believe that was in London, but again, got destroyed there, so not a great look. But you could offer this to him as a UFC Fight Night main event in London. This is main event worthy. And with a lot of the British fighters right now, you can't put them on Fight Night cards. Paddy Pimblett is a pay-per-view star. He could easily main event a pay-per-view by himself and sell out an arena. Tom Aspinall, the heavyweight champion, he's going to be looking for a rematch with Cyril Gane. That can't be on a Fight Night card. So Leon Edwards is a pretty big name that is British. Even on the losing streak, he's still a pretty big name that can be a main event of a London Fight Night card. And then you can have a co-main of somebody like Christian Leroy Duncan, another big British up-and-comer, fighting somebody higher ranked in the middleweight division, have a Nathaniel Wood finally getting a jump up the rankings and stuff like that. So I believe the clearest fight for Uros Medić next is to do him versus Leon Rocky Edwards. And now I'll go on to the loser of the main event, which is Daniel Rodriguez. And I believe the best fight for him next is to do the rematch with Kevin Holland. Now I know previously in one of my videos, I created the matchup of Kevin Holland versus John Paul Labosniani, which I would like to see next. For JPL, it'd be a good win and something that'd probably get him a ranked fight after, but JPL is probably going to have to take on another unranked killer, which sucks, but hopefully he wins and then either gets ranked or gets a ranked opponent. But Kevin Holland, right after the main event on Instagram, called out Daniel Rodriguez for a rematch of their fight from UFC 318. And with Daniel Rodriguez, with D-Rod being 39 years old, now coming off 8 months in Mexican prison, and then a first-round vicious KO loss, I think he's probably, if he doesn't just retire or something, he's probably going to be looking for fun fights like this versus Kevin Holland. And Kevin Holland right now is injured, so he's going to be taking some time off. And in a couple months, when D-Rod is ready from this KO, they'll be ready to fight. Kevin Holland is the most active fighter in the UFC, so maybe he could even reschedule the fight with Jacoby Smith, lose it or win it, and then still do this fight, But the first fight of these two, I thought Kevin Holland would win pretty easily by like a Darce, and he almost had it a couple times, but it was just a really bad performance, really made me lose belief in Kevin Holland. And he's always been a 50-50 fighter, but he only seems to really lose to guys who are pretty good or just like dumb decisions, like not shooting takedowns on Wonder Boy and getting out fighting on the feet with one of the best strikers in the UFC. But this was fighting a 37, 38-year-old guy who doesn't have any really crazy power or grappling or anything like that. So it was like, how are you getting beat by this guy? And also he got dropped, where it was like, I saw you take like spinning kicks right on the chin from Wonder Boy and barely get rocked as much as he did by D-Rod. So also it was a very fun fight. Probably should have been fight of the night on 318 instead of Vettori versus Brendan Allen, but nevertheless, I think this is going to be the fight they do next. D-Rod, I think, has mentioned it and probably wants it next as well, because supposedly Kevin Holland bailed him out of Mexican prison as long as they did the rematch. So, D-Rod's got to live up on his part of the bargain for that and give Kevin Holland his rematch. So I'd say do this next. Two unranked guys that'll put on a fun fight, and, I'd probably pick Kevin Holland to win it, but, he flopped in the first fight, so maybe D-Rod could get a win and ride off into the sunset, because he'd be about 40 by the time this fight happens, probably, but this would be a great fight. Going on to the winner of the co-main event, Navajo Sterling, with a crazy win, upset, at least I thought it was, and he's going from number 15 to probably about number 4 in the rankings. So I believe the next fight for him is going to be a big one, and that will be Khalil Roundtree. Navajo Sterling versus Khalil Roundtree. I think this would be a sick fight. It would be purely a striking matchup. I've seen some people just say do Khalil versus Magomed Ankalaev, but I don't think so. Ank, even if it was boring and a short notice opponent, he's already proven he's one of the best light heavyweights with Olberg injured. I think you just got to do him versus Paulo Costa for the interim title. But I believe this is a good fight to make next. I don't think Khalil Roundtree should be getting an Ankalaev anyways after being on a loss to both Pereira and Yuri Prochazka, both devastating KOs as well. Took a lot of damage. So I'm kind of not glad that he got injured, but glad he got some more time off, because if he had gotten beat up or knocked out by Ank, that was probably career-ending damage in his last 3 fights. But I think this is a fight to make next for him. Not somebody he's going to have to worry about the takedown threat. This fight will be purely on the feet and will probably be a pretty fun fight, Now Navajo Sterling's coming out. He used to be a guy, 3 decisions in a row, where it seemed like he was kind of just a boring guy, but recently he's coming off 3 finishes in a row. In this one, the most brutal, really beat up Jan Blachowicz, a very good fighter who we've never seen really been done like this for a while. I mean, he's had very close fights with Pereira, the former champion, Alberg, the current champion, Ankalaev, a former champion. And the Guskov thing was kind of like many people thought he won it, and many people thought he won a lot of those fights. I've seen people say, oh, he should be a champion with 3 title defenses right now, So this was an impressive win by Navajo Sterling. He even called out either Roundtree or Paulo Costa. I believe Paulo Costa is going to be looking up for an interim title matchup whereas Khalil Roundtree is coming off some losses. He's probably going to, be looking for something like this. I think he should be looking for something like this next. And it's going to be a fight with he's not going to be having to worry about grappling. And it's just going to be pure striking for him. It's not even a jump down in the rankings for him, which I think he probably needed to take. I think Navajo Sterling might be ranked above him after this fight, but still, it's a fresh matchup and a winnable matchup for Khalil, and either way, a very fun fight. So I think this is the fight that you do next. On to the loser of the co-main event, which I'm very sad about. Legendary Polish Power. But I said you should make this matchup next in my video on the Ankalaev versus Guskov card, and I don't think really anything changes. I think if Jan Blachowicz is not going to retire, you need to run this fight back. And I'm going to go off, screw it, I'm going off the media rankings. I think they're better for the most part. And the UFC, even though they created these meta AI rankings, they don't even use them, so what's the point? But Jan Blachowicz is number 4. Guskov, I believe, is number 9. Jan Blachowicz will probably fall down like 6 or 7 or something like that. So he should still be ranked above Guskov. And he has a draw to him, and he didn't seem like he was going to retire, so they both got TKO'd. Blachowicz probably took a little more damage, but I think you just make this fight late this year or early next year. Hopefully Blachowicz can get a win, and maybe I think his title dreams are done. He's 42, 43, coming off a loss now, and an actual definitive loss, unlike many of his other ones. But at least hopefully he could get a win, maybe have another fun fight, like a Roundtree or something like that, and maybe ride off into the sunset, a legend. But I think you still have to do this fight next. He had a draw with him. You kind of got to do a rematch. Shoot, maybe, even though he didn't do a rematch with Ankalaev, but I think you got to rematch this fight, and it still kind of makes sense to me. So going on to the next fight you have to make, that being Alexander Rakic versus Johnny Walker. So obviously Johnny Walker was set to fight Ante-Delija on, I believe it was the Ankalaev versus Guskov card. But Ante-Delija, I thought it was Johnny Walker that pulled out, but I looked it up, and it was Ante-Delija that pulled out with injury, because I was going to set up Rakic with Delija since he was already in a camp. But, I mean, Walker is ready to go. Rakic probably didn't take that much damage. It was a pretty boring fight. So do this. He's like pretty ranked pretty low in the heavyweight division. So So is Delisha. That's why they were giving Johnny Walker to him. So let's have two light heavyweights fight at heavyweight. I think it'd be a good fight, and it'd probably be a better fight than having Rakic just be boring against some heavyweight blob. At least he can be boring against Johnny Walker. Try to be boring against Johnny Walker, who is one of the most entertaining fighters in the UFC, and especially at these higher weight classes. So I think this would be a good fight. We could see maybe Rakic has enough. He was pretty boring in his last fight, but maybe at heavyweight he has enough power to knock out Johnny Walker because he's kind of a glass cannon. But maybe Johnny Walker, especially at heavyweight, has even more power and just viciously KOs Rakic, and we have a more fun contender at heavyweight than we do with Rakic, to be completely honest. But I think this would be a good fight. I've seen people say give Rakic like Brando Pericic, but I believe he's going to be looking up, and Pericic is going to be looking up in the rankings for better fights than like a guy who's going to be like number 14, 15, or 13 in the rankings. So I believe this is fair. And then if Rakic wins this, then maybe you can give him a top 10 opponent. But on to the next fight to make for Marcin Tybura, the loser of the featured fight. And that fight I think you should make is Marcin Tybura versus Shamil the Blob Gaziev. This would be the greatest fight of the blobs. Two of the best blobs to ever do it in the UFC heavyweight division. Shamil Gaziev obviously has a fight coming up versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. Sorry, butchered that one, but he could win it. But a lighter man skill guy like Kennedy with a lot of power and pretty good KOs, it might just be another beat down on Shamil Gaziev where he just zombie walks at him until he gets KO'd. Or maybe he wins it. But if he wins it, he'll still be ranked pretty low at the heavyweight division. And if he loses it, he'll be unranked. But either way, win or lose, I think they should do this fight. It'd be two blobs going at it. We'd see which one gasses out first. Definitely make it 3 rounds. We don't want to see this for 5 rounds, obviously. But it'd be very fun to see who's craftier, who's fatter. The clinch is going to be insane, belly to belly, rubbing against each other. And to be honest, at this point, I think Shamil Gaziev would probably win it. He's got some power, at least, and some wrestling. Marcin Tybura in his fight just looked to try to hold Rakic up against the cage and had some success because he's a smaller guy than him, but you can't hold Shamil Gaziev up against the cage. He weighs like 300 pounds, so I think this would be a good fight. Shamil Gaziev, good weather, beautiful girls, He'd come in, the cage would be shaking like there's a T-Rex from Jurassic Park from both these fighters weighing over 300 pounds, And we'd get to see the battle of the blobs. We would get to crown the king of the title, the BBE, best blob ever. Way better than the BMF, let's be honest. This fight will probably be more entertaining than the last BMF fight. But, I think we got to do this fight. Jokes aside, I think it makes decent sense. Win or lose, Shamil Gaziev. I don't know if Tybura will still be ranked after this fight, but if he is, it's a good fight to make. On to the next fight you have to make, which is sorry, I'm blanking on the names here. Gilbert Urbina versus, what even is this guy's name, man? Shoot, I'm really blanking on his name here, man. Robert Valentin versus Gilbert Urbina. I don't know why I really blanked on his win. I think Robert Valentin's kind of a cool fighter. Jeez, I just really had a brain fart there. But both these guys coming off first round finishes. Both these guys didn't take a whole lot of damage. Gilbert Urbina's fight lasted like a minute. Robert Valentin's fight was all grappling until he got the submission. And they're both kind of dudes who are kind of bottom feeders of the middleweight division. Both dudes who don't have the best of records, and both dudes who are probably just trying to get their win money in the UFC, hopefully get a performance of the night or something like that, feed their family. So they'd both probably be willing to turn around pretty quick for this fight. So I think that's why this is the next fight to make. Gilbert Urbina's willing to stand and trade. Robert Valentin's a pretty good striker, so maybe this could be a decent scrap or something like that. They're not the most technical best guys. They both have 5-6 losses, so maybe they'd be willing to just scrap it out, and it'd be a pretty fun fight. But I just think it makes sense. They're both middleweight. They both won in under a round. Schedule it in like a month or so. They both want money. They both need money. So just make this fight. And that's the last fight I made for this card, but I don't know. I'm trying to think of other matchups for Medić Rebeski. I would say, I've seen people say do Tofik Musayev against Grant Dawson, but I would say, they both won pretty quickly, didn't take that much damage. So I'd say you do Medić Rebeski versus Tofik Musayev. I think that'd be a good fight. Who else? Michael Oliveira. I don't know what you do with him. I've seen... I think a good matchup would be Charles Radke, but I don't want to get Chuck Buffalo murdered like that. But maybe he could win. But I think maybe Charles Radke should stay at lightweight because he's got a size advantage up there and he's done better, or down there. But if he stays at welterweight, that'd be a good fight to make. So yeah, I'd say do Charles Radke versus Michael Oliveira, and then do Medić Rebeski versus Tofik Musayev. Maybe you could do it on the UFC 333, I think is supposed to be in Abu Dhabi. Tofik Musayev's obviously a Muslim guy. Rebeski fights on a lot of these, like, Middle East, Russia sort of cards, so it would make sense, And they already did Azerbaijan, so Musayev can't fight there. And there's no Poland cards for Rebeski, so Abu Dhabi would be kind of like the middle ground of that. So, yeah, also do Rebeski versus Musayev, and then do Mikel Oliveira versus Charles Radke, and hopefully Radke gets to say it again. But those are my fights, the best fights to make next after UFC Fight Night, Belgrade, Serbia. Uros Medić versus Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez. And if you like the video and want to see more, like the video, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.